Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the State Department. Just very quickly, one brief thing. Oh, I'll wait for, sorry, I didn't give full 2 minutes. Please, sir. Have a seat, Justin.
Thank you. Please.
Quickly at the top, and then I'll get to your questions. And this will go out right after the briefing, but just a notice to the press that Secretary Kerry is going to deliver remarks at Miami-Dade Honors College. He'll do that at 7 p.m. on April 14th, so Thursday, at the Miami Freedom Tower in Miami, Florida. Secretary Kerry's remarks will congratulate the MDC Honors College students on their academic accomplishments and leadership contributions and reflect on the future challenges and opportunities that they will face. And during the special ceremony, MDC's Honors College students will receive their honors medallions in recognition of the completion of their course of work. And that will, of course, be open to the press. And that is all I have at the top, just in time for Matt's arrival.
Yes.
Sorry, it's a quick 2 minutes. I
Sorry,
promise.
no, it wasn't you. I had to run back to my desk.
Yes, sir.
I'm here. So I don't really have anything huge to begin
Okay.
with, but I do want to ask you, last week there were reports that the U.S. was considering withdrawing some of its troops from the mission in the Sinai, and I asked about it here, and you said they were completely false. I said, so these reports and chatter are wrong, and you said yes. You said, we remain fully committed to our multinational force and observers mission and the maintenance of the peace treaty between Israel and Egypt, so no change in policy, no change in our force structure or whatever. Well, this morning, the Pentagon says that, in fact, you are talking about withdrawing some of your troops from the force and having drones or unmanned surveillance take their place. So, I'm not blaming you personally, but what gives here? I mean, why can't we get a straight answer out of this building?
Sure. Well, first of all, we're not planning to withdraw from the Sinai.
That wasn't
Right.
the
No,
question.
I agree. Or I just laying that out. There was a story last week that you brought up based on leaked information. Admittedly, I did not have the full picture at the time, so I take that hit. But as you note, the Pentagon did speak to this earlier today. There is a modernization, I guess, effort, is how I would put it, or a restructuring effort that is going to take place with regard to the multinational force and observers in the Sinai. And again, the Pentagon spoke to this earlier today.
Well, was it being considered last Friday when I asked the question? I mean, my issue here, I realize this is
Yep.
a Pentagon thing, it's not a State Department thing necessarily, although it is kind of a State Department thing because
is.
it results from a treaty that was negotiated by this building. And, how can we expect to get on?
Yeah, it's a legitimate, look,
And I don't want to
as
make
I
this
said,
about you because you
No,
obviously
but I take the hit, Matt, because, that's my job to get up here and to give you accurate information.
Yeah, but I don't want it to be about you.
Yeah,
and what
no, I understand what you're saying.
Specifically you. I want it to be about this building and this government through any administration actually telling the truth. I really don't understand. I mean, did the Pentagon just decide over the weekend that it was going to do this? I don't think so.
No, of course not. That said, and there is, and I can't really talk about the timeline, but the timeline for notification and for looking at this process, and again, DOD is the experts on this, had not yet been decided when that story did leak out. So it caught
But apparently
folks by surprise.
Secretary Carter has sent letters telling the Egyptians and the Israelis about
In the
this
interim,
idea.
yes, he did.
So that was done over the weekend?
It
Or,
was done over the last couple of days, is my understanding.
so it hadn't been done on Friday?
Yes, that's
So
correct.
the letters had
That is
not been
correct,
sent.
yes.
Can I ask a related
So,
question on this?
hold
Let
on
him
a
finish,
second.
I'll get to you.
I just want to make.
Yeah, that's okay.
So, although the letters had not been sent on Friday, when you said that this was,
I don't think it was Friday, by the way. I think it was earlier in the week,
Sorry.
but maybe you're right.
it was April, no, it was the
Okay.
6th.
Okay, that's fine.
Whatever day the 6th was.
So there has been some time that passed. It's been about a week.
Yeah, but this is
But-
not, this idea or
Yep.
this possible change in force posture
Yep.
has been being considered for more than a week, right? I mean, just didn't pop into someone's mind on
Of
April
course not.
7th.
Of course not. But as these processes go, there was a back and forth, there was a discussion, there's been looking at how to do this and how to enable it. Understood. Your point is taken.
Where spokespeople get up.
No, your
and
point's taken,
say-
Matt.
All right.
Your point's taken. Roz?
Okay, let's take a look at the fact that this treaty was negotiated 37 years ago. And now for the first time, because of the rise of ISIL and because of the attacks on Egyptian forces, the U.S. military is telling us that now a substantial change in the way that it complies with the terms of that agreement are being changed for the safety of U.S. forces. Did the U.S. government ever consider that preserving an essential treaty such as the one between Egypt and Israel could be threatened by some non-state actor, one that has proven to be extremely dangerous, and possibly endanger the very future of the peace treaty between Egypt and Israel?
A couple of points on the premise of your question, Roz. First of all, this was not done in response to any real or perceived threat by ISIL forces on the ground in the Sinai. This is part of an ongoing effort, again, my understanding, our understanding, to look at how to modernize the MFO, including utilization of technology, including greater efficiencies of operations, but to look at how to change its posture on the ground in order to do its job more effectively. Whether and how significant a force reduction that will entail, I can't speak to at this point in time. But what I can say is in no way does it speak to a lessening in our commitment to the objective of the MFO mission. It doesn't in any way signal a plan to withdraw from the Sinai. We are fully committed to the MFO mission and the maintenance of the peace treaty between Egypt and Israel.
Well, the timing of this modernization is quite curious because on September 15th, a number of U.S. forces, 4 or 5 people, were injured as part of an attack allegedly carried out by ISIL fighters. The U.S. has been using drone technology for the better part of 15 years now. It seems rather curious that the U.S. would seriously consider not only moving personnel out of the area, but possibly reducing the number of personnel on the Sinai after all of this time of using this technology. So is it not true that the U.S. is very much concerned that its forces are a target now by ISIL and that they're taking advantage of the precarious security situation on the Sinai? And that's why this is happening.
Again, I would refer you to DOD. They spoke to this already today. This is about modernizing our force structure on the ground in the Sinai. It's not about responding to, as I said, the threat of ISIL on the ground. There have been, I think there's been one direct attack that we have determined against MFO forces on the ground that wounded actually several personnel in the MFO. There have been other attacks, but we believe that those have been actually targeting Egyptian forces. But in no way is this a lessening of our commitment. And it also, this is part of, I mean, we're in constant consultation, and, you know, I spoke about this with Matt just now, via the letters, but we're in constant consultation with Egypt, with Israel, about when we look at how to restructure, how to reposture ourselves on the ground in the Sinai. These are not, these are part of ongoing consultations.
But it's rather curious that the U.S. would consider changing the way that it deploys its 900 or so officers and enlisted personnel as part of this protection force when Egyptian forces have been attacked and the U.S. has not before now thought, oh, let's offer this technology to support our Egyptian allies as they try to secure the area, particularly as they're not dealing just with ISIL, but they're also trying to deal with Hamas fighters who have been infiltrating Egypt to carry out their own work. The timing is rather curious, Mark.
Again, all I can say, Roz, is that, as we look at our force structure on the ground, and Department of Defense are the ones who really should speak to this in greater detail. But we constantly look at how to modernize them, how to achieve greater efficiencies, and how to better use technology on the ground. Whether and how that means, or what that means in terms of the number of troops we need on the ground is a matter for DOD to decide, and indeed the whole MFO. I mean, we're just one contingent within the MFO.
Well, I can't imagine, though, that the Pentagon is the only one having conversations
Of course
with their
not.
Egyptian and Israeli
course not.
counterparts. What conversations have been had between this building, the Egyptian Defense Ministry and Foreign Ministry, as well as the Egyptian counterparts about this decision? This is a rather sizable change in something that has been going on for nearly 4 decades.
Well, again, I'm not going to read out in detail what our consultations have been with either Egypt or Israel as we've looked at this restructuring. All I can say is that it's all part of ongoing discussions that we have, consultations that we have on the ground. I think the end goal is to create a force on the ground in the Sinai that is more nimble, more able to carry out its tasks. And again, it's in no way meant to diminish our commitment to our treaty obligations. Please, sir.
So accepting the premise of your response, why was the threat posed by ISIL not a factor in deciding how to modernize the force?
Why was, I'm
Posed
sorry.
by the Islamic State and jihadist groups in Sinai. You argue that you're simply modernizing it in order to conduct the same mission as before, monitoring the peace treaty between
Yep.
Egypt and Israel.
Right.
So why
Well,
not?
why was it not- I'm
was-
sorry,
why
why
did
was
you
it
not
not
take into
considered?
account the increased threat by
Well,
non-state actors?
I can say that in recent period, and again, there has been, as Roz just detailed, there have been some attacks by ISIL forces in Sinai. We have provided the MFO with some additional force protection, as well as communication, medical, and other support. I just, timing aside, I think this is more of a comprehensive look at how to restructure the force going forward. Of course, we take into consideration all factors on the ground, including the security. But with the clear understanding that we've got a mandate with the MFO to fulfill, and so we're not going to diminish that capability to do that.
What is the building's message to those Israelis and Egyptians living in Sinai, near the Sinai, having counted on the presence of U.S. forces to not just maintain the peace between the two countries, but also to deal with Hamas, with dealing with ISIL and others, that the movement of people away from where they have traditionally been stationed is going to maintain their security?
The message is that we remain fully committed to the MFO mission, the maintenance of the peace treaty between Israel and Egypt. We're going to support the MFO and its ongoing efforts to carry out its mission, to verify the treaty, and we're going to do that in a smart, modernized way. So this isn't a matter of simply putting more troops on the ground or more boots on the ground or throwing more money at it. This is an attempt to, I think, modernize and look at how to make the force that is there more agile. Please, sir. Are we done with, are you moving on, or are you on Sinai? Great, happy to talk about Iraq.
So there's a KRG delegation here in the United States. Before they get here, the KRG spokesperson said they are here at the request of the United States. I was wondering if the United States has actually invited them to be here. And they're here, obviously, from what they say, requesting for more financial help for the Peshmerga forces, especially when it comes to the liberation of Mosul. That's my first question. The second question, I think it was last Friday when Secretary Kerry was in Baghdad, and it was notably, he didn't go to Erbil. So the decision not to go to Erbil by Secretary Kerry, how much this decision has to do with the refusal of President Barzani to step down from presidency?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, on the KRG delegation, there is a delegation led by Deputy Prime Minister Kubad Taliban, who's rather scheduled to be in Washington. I think they arrived yesterday. They're scheduled to be here till the 15th. They're going to meet with administration officials to discuss the economic crisis facing the Iraqi Kurdistan region, as well as humanitarian assistance and, of course, overall U.S. support for the fight against Daesh. As to who invited whom, I can't speak to that, but I know they're scheduled to meet with several Department of State officials, including Deputy Secretary Tony Blinken, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Iraq, Joseph Pennington, Special Envoy and Coordinator for International Energy Affairs, Amos Hochstein, and Undersecretary for Civilian Security, Democracy and Human Rights, Sarah Sewell. In answer to your second question about why the Secretary didn't travel to Erbil, all I can say is that, he was on the ground in Baghdad for a day. Obviously, there are security concerns always when he's moving about in Iraq. I don't think it was meant to send any signal to the people of the region of Kurdistan region, rather, Iraqi Kurdistan region. We've been very supportive of their efforts to combat Daesh. They have played an absolutely vital role, in fact, within the overall Iraqi command and control structure in pushing Daesh out of key parts of the country. Special Presidential Envoy Brett McGurk did remain in Iraq, and he also, I believe, met with Iraqi Kurdistan region officials as well over the last several days. So we're fully focused on the Kurdistan region. We're committed to helping them as much as we can and providing what assistance we can.
So you're saying it has nothing to do with the issue of presidency in the Kurdistan region? Because last time he went to Erbil.
I understand that. I think it was more a matter of scheduling priorities or scheduling demands.
Just
Yes, sir.
One last thing on
Yes, sir.
the KRG delegation.
Yes.
Do you have new financial support of the Kurdistan region? Or, they met with the secretary in Baghdad, and now they are here with the request of more financial help from the U.S. Is there any new humanitarian or military or financial assistance to the KRG?
I don't have anything to announce beyond the $155 million that Secretary Kerry announced when he was on the ground in Baghdad, which is obviously going towards humanitarian assistance for displaced, conflict-affected areas. And that's on top of, I think, nearly $800 million since the start of fiscal year 2014. But of course, we're always looking at ways we can provide more support. Please.
Hi, Mark.
Yeah.
On a different topic, South China Sea.
Sure, okay.
So Manila is to restart a military airport revamping South China Sea on the illegally occupied island, Zhongye Island. So what is the U.S. point of view on this? What kind of stand do you hold?
Well, I'd refer you to the government of the Philippines to talk about their activities. Overall, our position regarding the South China Sea hasn't changed.
But, Mark, Manila once announced a suspension to the construction, but now you see they restart the construction. So do you think they are playing the hypocrite? What's your point of view?
Look, I'm not going to characterize their actions beyond saying that our position regarding the South China Sea is very well known. We don't want to see construction activities on disputed features. We don't want to see any kind of militarization of outposts. What we want to see, frankly, is a de-escalation of tensions and refraining from provocative actions, with regard to Philippines' specific plans or proposals for in South China Sea. I just have to refer you to them.
One last thing, that this fully...
When the Chinese do things that you say are provocative and unilateral in terms of construction on disputed areas, you tell them that you say it's bad and they should stop, and you call on them not to do it. Why won't you do that in the same
For one thing, I don't,
vein for the Philippines?
for one thing, I don't have specific details about what they're planning to do or not do on the islands, and we'd have to wait to get more details about that.
Well, but, I mean, you said the other day when you were asked about this lighthouse that was going up on a Chinese lighthouse.
And I
that was
said we'll
going
have to
up.
certainly wait and see what
Yeah, but
it
you
looks
said that
like.
they shouldn't do it.
Well, I think in response to our second question, I did say our policy has not changed.
Go ahead with any plan it has to build an airstrip.
That's not,
on-
that specific policy is not exclusive to China.
Okay.
But the Philippines actually unilaterally initiated the arbitration case. So now Manila had this kind of action. That this fully prove this arbitration case is a political provocation under the cloak of law?
Not at all. I mean, look, we have called on all claimants to clarify their claims in accordance with international law. That's what we believe is the best route and the most peaceful route, frankly, to resolve any claims or disputes over the South China Sea. And that includes, as you note, rules-based mechanisms like international arbitration, which is what they are pursuing. So we believe that case should move forward and in accordance with international law.
So what is the message behind the inconsistency of Philippines' words and action?
I mean, I don't have any more detail to provide. Frankly, I would, again, have to refer to the Philippine government to speak for itself in terms of what its actions are, what its motivations are behind its actions. All I can say is what our policy, and that hasn't changed. We want to see rules-based mechanism or adherence to rules-based mechanisms to resolve claims regarding South China Sea. Thanks. Please, sir. You and then you.
Kind of
Please.
separate.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
So the Chinese Foreign Ministry criticized the G7 foreign minister's statement on the South China Sea and the East China Sea, saying that the G7 should focus on global economic governance and members should stop making irresponsible remarks. Do you have a response to that?
I really don't. I'll let the G7 statement speak for itself. We certainly signed it and agreed to it, but I'm not going to get into an argument back and forth over whether it was valid or not. We believe it was. Please.
So do you think that the strong reaction from China is indication that the continued focus on this issue is having an effect of pressuring the Chinese on the topic?
Hard to say. There are, as you well know, there's a lot of sensitivities about South China Sea and about territorial claims surrounding it. Again, what I think it speaks to is the need for peaceful diplomatic legal mechanisms to resolve these issues to the point where we're not seeing, as we just discussed, reclamation projects, construction projects, any kind of thing that's going to lead to escalated tensions and provocations. Please.
Just want to follow up on
Yes.
Matt's point. Last week, when China finished building the lighthouse, you immediately expressed your objection. So when it comes to Philippines, are you trying to turn a blind eye to Philippines' action in South China Sea?
I think what I said, and I have, as I said, we've seen the reports stating that China will begin operating a lighthouse on the Subi Reef. Again, I just haven't seen, or nor do I have any greater detail on what, frankly, the Philippine government is proposing to do. So all I can say is revert back to what our stance is, our position is regarding any kind of attempt to construct new facilities or in any way develop the South China Sea islands. So I'll stop there.
So you want to condone Philippines' action in South China Sea if it's confirmed true?
We don't, again, not without singling out the Philippines, I think broadly, yes, we don't want to see any kind of development on any of the islands that will further escalate tensions.
Are you concerned if China take any counteraction to go against
Well, again, I mean,
Philippines?
we're certainly concerned, and that's one of the reasons why we always speak to our concerns about these kinds of actions, is that we don't want to see, as they often do, set off an escalation of tension. That's the last thing we want to see.
Also in China, can
Kenyan authorities have deported 37 Taiwanese citizens to China on Tuesday, and the Taiwanese government said the Kenyan police used force and tear gas to send them onto a plane. Do you have any comment on that?
Excuse me, I'm aware of the reports, we're looking into it. I don't have any further details. You're talking about the 37 Taiwanese citizens who were, yes, sent back to China by the Kenyan authorities. Again, we've just seen reports so far. We're trying to get more details about it.
I suppose this is included in that, but the Taiwanese are also saying that one of the citizens is a joint Taiwanese-U.S. citizen. Are you
Also aware of that report. We just don't have a Privacy Act where we, due to privacy considerations, we can't speak to that right now. Again, as we get more details, we'll obviously share them with you.
Just one more. The Kenyan government said the one China policy as the basis of this deportation action. Is it consistent with your interpretation of the one China policy in this regard?
Again, I think we need to see more details and more details behind what the Kenyan government's, or what motivated the Kenyan government, what its actions were trying to do, what it was trying to accomplish here in order to make any kind of judgment about what they did. Please, sir.
Are you considering taking any measures against the referendum in Darfur to discredit it or to influence the government in Sudan?
Hold one moment, please. You're talking about, well, I mean, I put out a statement last night, obviously, condemning some of the recent attacks by the Sudanese Sudan People's Liberation Army, the SPLA, which destroyed a declared opposition cantonment site in Wau County in South Sudan. And we've made clear, both to President Kiir and opposition leader Makar, that neither we nor the international community will accept any kind of return to war, and that the responsibility for implementing the agreement rests on the shoulders of both parties to the conflict. Wait, I apologize. Oh, Darfur, I apologize. I thought you were talking about South Sudan. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I have nothing to say about
The statement, but are you going to take any measures to discredit it or to pressure the government of Sudan or with the African Union?
But the statement I issued, I apologize. I was confused. I was speaking about South Sudan. We haven't. I don't know what you're talking about in Darfur. No visibility on that. Sorry. Like a lot of issues today, I seem to be surprised up here about. Appreciate that.
Don't be too harsh on yourself.
Thank you, Matt.
On India, Defense Secretary Carter's visit to India, the two countries decided to increase their defense relationship, including letting the other countries' military base and facilities be available to the militaries of other countries.
Talk about Secretary Carter.
Yes, Secretary Carter.
Well, obviously, refer you to DOD on specifics about his visit. Our defense cooperation with India, as you know, is strong. It's a leading pillar of our broad relationship. We support, obviously, India's rise as a capable actor in the region, and part of that is deepening our defense cooperation.
The agreements that the two countries have decided to sign, was the State Department consulted on those?
Was consulted? Of course we were, yeah. I mean, we would be, as we would in any kind of interagency
Would this
discussion.
have any implications on China?
I mean, how so specifically, just in terms of?
Because the U.S. military can go and use Indian facilities, same the Indian military can come here and use the U.S. facilities. Would that have any implications on U.S. relations with China?
Look, I mean, I'm not going to conjecture. All I'll say is that we support positive, peaceful, stable relations with all countries in the region. That includes India and China. There's no zero-sum game here. Please. Hey, Nikki. There you go.
Right. Now you just mentioned SPLA.
That's right. I just spoke to it already. I'm
Right.
already ahead of myself. That's how impressive I am today. Sorry. Go ahead, Nikki. I'm
Right,
sorry.
Yesterday, you put out a statement condemning the recent attacks
Yes.
by SPLA. Now that the opposition leader Riek Machar is arriving Juba next Monday, he's supposed to arrive there to swear in as the first vice president. Are you concerned that recent attacks by SPLA will heighten the tensions prior to his arrival?
So this is going to sound familiar. But of course, as I just said, we did condemn recent attacks by the SPLA. We've expressed concerns about opposition forces and associated groups that have been attacking recently government forces in the area as well. And as I said, we made clear to both President Kiir and to opposition leader Makar that we won't accept a return to conflict, to war, and that the responsibility for implementing the agreement rests on the shoulders of both parties to the conflict. And both sides need to avoid exacerbating tensions and should return for Makar's safe, should prepare for Makar's safe return in a safe and orderly fashion. Please, sir.
A little bit more specific about what you mean by saying we won't accept a return to conflict or war? What does that mean?
Well, I'm just, look, I mean, we've seen this happen too many times with South Sudan. I mean, there's a number of possibly of actions that we could take, but we're also, well, I mean, there's, again, I'm not going to preview anything that we're not ready to announce. But I think what we're trying to very clearly state is that this is going on too long, that we're at a juncture here where it looks like they're sliding back into conflict, and that both sides bear responsibility to put this thing back on track. Please. Afghanistan.
The Taliban had announced that they are going to launch a spring offensive and promise large-scale attacks. Is the State Department considering stepping up its assistance to the Afghan government, and if so, how?
So that announcement obviously came as no surprise. We always see the announcement of the spring fighting season. We are preparing, as we have been, to assist the government in defending against the Taliban. We have, working through both U.S. and coalition forces, we have been working with Afghan forces on the ground to improve their capability, their ability to fight and push back. You know, they have the primary responsibility now since 2015, rather. We're going to continue those efforts. I don't have anything specific in terms of increased assistance. I mean, we are working closely with President Ghani and Afghan security forces to ensure that they, as I said, have the training necessary and the equipment necessary to preserve the gains that they've made over the last 14 years. And of course, NATO's got its resolute support mission on the ground there that's going to continue. As we've often stated, the goal here is to support and build up the capacity for Afghan forces to provide for the security of the country, and recognizing the ongoing security challenges. The decision was made, of course, to maintain a level of troops to keep the 5,500 American troops in Afghanistan beyond 2016 in order to continue to carry out that essential mission on the ground. And that includes counterterrorism operations against remnants of Al-Qaeda and, of course, ISIL and other terrorist groups in the region, but also, as I said, just continuing to build up the capacity for Afghan security forces to provide security for the country.
The Taliban
Yes.
also said that they were going to try and avoid civilian casualties and hitting infrastructure. What do you make of that?
Well, I'll just say that all of this, this announcement, this pledge to, again, begin the spring fighting season, it just underscores the need for the start of a peace process. A peace process that's Afghan-led and Afghan-owned. That was a central message of the Secretary when he visited there this past week. It just underscores also that this conflict is not going to be resolved on the battlefield.
But how serious the peace process is? Hasn't it met a dead end because Taliban have now announced for the offensive?
Well, I mean, it has not proceeded as quickly as I think many would have liked. Again, without being able to, I'm not, I would refer you to the Taliban, frankly, to talk about, but they have undergone some leadership changes and have been unresponsive to this effort to get these peace talks going. That only underscores, frankly, the urgency going forward.
So are you giving them?
I did. You're welcome to. I'm sure the BBC has spoken to them many times.
Are you giving them a benefit of doubt to the Taliban, new Taliban?
Not at all.
leadership?
I'm just saying the ball is in their respective court. The government of Afghanistan has said it would be ready to hold these peace talks.
If there's need, are you willing to reinforce more troops inside Afghanistan based on?
I don't have
how-
anything to announce, certainly, other than
Go ahead.
the president's decision to maintain the current levels through 2016. Please.
On North Korea, it's being reported that North Korea is preparing for a possible mobile ballistic missile launch that could hit portions of the U.S. Can you confirm that, or do you have a response?
I don't. I mean, not specifically to that allegation or that threat out there. I mean, we've seen, obviously, North Korea continue to take actions, irresponsible actions in pursuit of, or rather, just in an effort to destabilize the region. None of these actions are particularly helpful, only escalate tensions further. But I don't have anything in response to that particular threat. We good? Oh, yes, sir.
They're far-flung, but they'll be very quick.
Far-flung.
One, yesterday you seemed to leave open the door to the idea of supporting a UN resolution that the
Did I?
Palestinians have, are showing around New York. But you said, in response to one question, you said we might take it to the Security Council. Did you mean to leave that impression?
I can firmly shut that door. No, look, I mean, that was, I think, the second day in a row I'd gotten that question. Nothing's been thus far formally introduced or circulated at the Security Council. No, I get it, right.
Is the administration open to the idea of such a resolution that would condemn settlement activity? Or is that something you think should be left out of the Security Council?
I'm going to say that our position hasn't changed in terms of action on this issue at the UN Security Council.
Which means that you're opposed to it?
Opposed to it.
Yeah, okay. Then I had, I asked you about, but I kind of got sidetracked onto the situation, the case in the UAE yesterday. So I don't know if you actually registered the taking question about these Palestinian human rights activists who are coming to town next week. Anyway, if you didn't, because it kind of got lost in the.
No, I agree. I
one's
apologize
from
for that.
Gaza, one's from the West Bank.
I know we took the question,
What if you get an answer?
but I will
as
get
to
you an
whether
answer
they
for that, of course.
Have any meetings here with people? They haven't been here in a
Absolutely.
while. And then lastly, these are the.
Those aren't that far flung, by the way. Those are pretty
Well,
close.
no. These are the far-flung
Okay.
ones. I'm just wondering if you guys have any thoughts, any comments about the situation in Brazil politically, and also
I think, yeah, sure, go ahead.
whether you have any kind of a position on the Egyptian decision to give these two Red Sea islands to Saudi Arabia.
On the Egyptian decision, I'm going to take that question. I just don't have any details about that. On the Brazilian question, and I think we said this, I obviously refer you to Brazilian authorities, but we believe Brazil's democracy is mature, it's strong enough to ensure that its current political challenges are met and get resolved in a way that allows Brazil to prosper.
All right. Would you say the same thing about South Africa?
Yes, I mean, I'm
You
aware
think
of
that
I'm aware of
democracy-
their own, yeah.
You think
I
their
mean,
democracy is mature enough? What's the maturity, the age of maturity for
It's like a
democracy
wine.
these days?
look, I mean, South Africa has some pretty significant challenges in terms of its political growth, but it also has democratic institutions in place that we believe can work to resolve these kinds of issues. And again, these are tests for any political system, including our own, when these kinds of allegations or investigations or issues come to the fore. I don't think anyone can say unequivocally that their democracy is superior or more mature than any other. But I think it speaks to the strength of anyone's democracy that they can weather these, that they have the processes and the institutions in place to weather them. So, yes, on both counts.
Okay. You do go, U.S. officials from all administrations, secretaries of state go around talking about how the United States is a mature democracy, the oldest democracy. So,
But we also make no claims as to whether our our democracy is superior than others.
Iceland's had an elected parliament for 1,000 years, and they just lost a prime minister.
There you go. Of course, I'm so sorry. Yeah.
A top State Department official is being cited as saying that the numbers for ISIS are the lowest that they've ever been since the U.S. started monitoring them in 2014. Can you confirm that that's the case? And do you have any numbers for what those might be?
I do not. So let's talk about this offline. Thanks. Yeah.